When my own brother looked at me in court and said, "You are nothing," I thought my life was over. But what happened next proved him so wrong it still gives me chills. Stay until the end of this story because the twist will leave you speechless. And if you love real stories about justice and standing up for yourself, subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon, because I share stories like this every single week. Now let me tell you what really went down in that courtroom. My name is David. I'm 47 years old, and I never thought I'd be sitting in a Chicago courthouse fighting my older brother Michael over the business our father built from nothing. Michael and I were partners in Anderson & Sons Construction for 15 years. Our dad started that company in his garage back in 1985, and when he retired 10 years ago, he left it to both of us equally. 50-50. But Michael always saw himself as the real boss. He was the one with the business degree from Northwestern. He was the one who wore expensive suits and played golf with investors. I was just the guy who knew how to actually build things, who spent my days on construction sites with the crews, covered in dust and sweat. To the outside world, Michael was the successful one, and he made sure everyone knew it. The company was doing well, pulling in about $2 million a year in revenue. We each took home a decent salary and things were stable, until Michael decided he wanted it all. 6 months before that court date, Michael called me into his office and told me he was buying me out. Just like that. No discussion, no negotiation. He slid a paper across his mahogany desk with a number on it. $300,000. For half of a company worth at least $4 million. I looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "You're joking, right?" I said. He wasn't joking. He told me I had 2 weeks to accept, or he'd make my life hell. I refused, and he kept his promise. He started freezing me out of decisions, holding meetings without me, changing vendor contracts without my signature. When I confronted him, he told me I could either take the buyout or face a lawsuit. He claimed I was mismanaging company funds, that I was incompetent, that I was dragging the business down. All lies. But Michael had always been a master manipulator. So he sued me. He filed a lawsuit claiming breach of fiduciary duty, mismanagement, and about 6 other things his expensive lawyers made up. And that's how we ended up in court. Brother against brother. Family destroying family. I walked into that courtroom with my attorney, Jennifer Hayes, a sharp woman in her 50s who took my case because she believed in me. Michael was sitting there with not 1 but 3 attorneys from some downtown firm that charges $800 an hour. His lead lawyer was this guy named Richard Steinberg, slick as oil, with a smile that never reached his eyes. The courtroom was packed. Some employees from the company were there, most of them sitting on Michael's side because they thought he was winning. A few of my crew guys showed up to support me, bless them. My wife Sarah was in the front row, looking at me with those steady eyes that always gave me strength. Michael's wife wasn't there, probably too embarrassed by the whole thing. The judge walked in, a woman named Honorable Patricia Morrison, mid-60s, with steel-gray hair and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. The bailiff called the court to order, and we began. Michael's attorney went first, and man, did he come out swinging. He painted me as this reckless, uneducated construction worker who didn't understand business, who made terrible decisions, who cost the company money through incompetence. He showed spreadsheets, expense reports, project timelines. Everything was twisted to make me look bad. A project that went over budget because of weather delays? My fault for poor planning. A client dispute that we eventually won? My fault for poor communication. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Then Michael took the stand. He was dressed in a Navy Tom Ford suit, looking every bit the successful businessman. He answered questions with this rehearsed confidence, this air of superiority. He talked about how he'd tried to protect the company from my mistakes, how he'd covered for me for years, how he'd finally reached his breaking point. Every word was a knife in my back. Then Steinberg asked him, "Mr. Anderson, can you describe your relationship with your brother?" Michael looked right at me. Not a hint of emotion in his eyes. "My brother David?" he said. "Honestly, he's nothing. He's a construction worker playing businessman. He doesn't understand finance, he doesn't understand contracts, he doesn't understand growth strategy, he's nothing. He never was. Our father gave him half the company out of pity, not merit. and it's time to correct that mistake." The words hung in the air like poison gas. "You are nothing." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Some people in the gallery actually gasped. Others, the ones on Michael's side, nodded like he'd just said something profound. My crew guys looked outraged, but they were in the minority. Nobody objected. My attorney wrote something down but didn't interrupt. I sat there feeling smaller and smaller, like I was disappearing right there in that wooden chair. The judge's expression didn't change. She just made a note and told them to continue. Michael's testimony went on for another 30 minutes. Every word was designed to destroy me. By the time he stepped down, I felt completely defeated. My attorney did her best in cross-examination, but Michael was smooth. He had an answer for everything. He never lost his cool. During the lunch recess, I sat in the courthouse cafeteria with Sarah and Jennifer. I couldn't eat. "They're destroying me in there," I said. "Everyone thinks I'm useless." Jennifer shook her head. "David, we haven't presented our case yet. Trust me." But I could see the concern in her eyes. Michael's lawyers were good. Really good. And they had the resources to bury me in paperwork and procedure. The afternoon session started with Michael's team presenting financial experts, accountants, business analysts, all of them backing up Michael's version of reality. The pressure was crushing. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My own brother was systematically dismantling my reputation, my career, my life. And for what? Greed. Pure greed. There were moments during that afternoon when I seriously considered just walking away, letting him have it all, taking whatever settlement he offered and just disappearing, starting over somewhere else. Sarah must have sensed it because she reached over the divider and squeezed my hand. That small gesture kept me in that chair. For a few minutes, I was completely alone in my head, drowning in doubt and shame. But then I remembered something. Something I'd kept in my truck for the past 3 years and almost forgot about. You see, Michael thought he was the only one who understood the business side of things. But I paid attention. I might not have an MBA, but I'm not stupid. And about 3 years ago, I noticed some irregularities in our accounts. Money moving around in ways that didn't make sense. So I started keeping copies. Not because I was planning anything, but because my gut told me to. I kept copies of invoices, bank statements, email chains. I stored them all in a fireproof box in my truck, and in those documents was evidence of something Michael didn't think I knew about. He'd been skimming, creating fake vendor accounts, billing the company for services never rendered, and pocketing the difference. About $60,000 a year for 3 years, almost $200,000 total. I'd confronted him about it privately 8 months ago, and that's probably the real reason he wanted me out. Not because I was incompetent, but because I knew too much. I leaned over to Jennifer during a break and told her about the documents. Her eyes went wide. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" she whispered. "I didn't think we'd need it," I admitted. "I thought the truth would be enough." She shook her head in disbelief. "Go get them. Now." I practically ran to the parking garage, grabbed the box from my truck, and brought it back. Jennifer spent the next 20 minutes reviewing everything during the recess. When she looked up at me, she was smiling. "David, this changes everything. This is fraud. This is embezzlement." When court reconvened, she asked permission to introduce new evidence. Michael's lawyers objected, of course, but Judge Morrison allowed it. Jennifer began entering the documents into evidence. Bank statements showing transfers to vendor accounts. Invoices for work never completed. Email exchanges where Michael used a fake email address to approve his own fraudulent invoices. The courtroom got very quiet. You could feel the energy shift. Michael's face went from confident to pale in about 30 seconds. His lawyers were whispering frantically to each other, flipping through their own files, trying to find answers. Jennifer walked the judge through every single transaction. She showed the pattern. She showed the fake companies. She showed the emails. It took about 20 minutes, and by the end, there was no doubt. Michael had been stealing from his own company, from our father's legacy, from me. When she finished, Judge Morrison removed her glasses and set them on the bench. She looked at Michael, then at his lawyers, then back at Michael. "Mr. Anderson," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Would you like to explain these documents?" Michael tried. He stammered something about accounting errors, about misunderstandings, about needing to review with his accountants. But it was pathetic. The confidence was gone. The smooth businessman act had completely crumbled. His lead attorney stood up and asked for a recess to consult with his client. Judge Morrison denied it. "No," she said firmly. "We're going to address this right now." She turned to Michael again. "Sir, based on these documents, it appears you've been systematically defrauding your own company while simultaneously accusing your brother of mismanagement. Is that correct?" Michael opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Answer the question, Mr. Anderson," the judge said. I can explain," he started. The judge raised her hand. When she did that, the entire courtroom went dead silent. That simple gesture carried so much authority, so much power. Everything changed in that moment. "I've been on this bench for 23 years, Judge Morrison said, her voice steady and cold. "And I've seen a lot of things. But what disgusts me most is when someone abuses a position of trust, steals from their own family, and then has the audacity to come into my courtroom and accuse the victim of their own crimes." She looked directly at Michael. "You stood in front of me today and called your brother nothing. You humiliated him. You tried to destroy his reputation, and all of it was to cover up your own theft." She turned to me. "Mr. Anderson, I want to apologize to you on behalf of this court for what you've had to endure today. These documents make it clear that you are not only competent but vigilant. You discovered fraud, and you documented it. That's not nothing. That's integrity." I felt tears burning in my eyes. After hours of humiliation, someone finally saw the truth. Someone finally validated what I knew all along. The judge continued. "I'm dismissing this lawsuit with prejudice. Mr. Michael Anderson's claims are not only without merit, they're malicious and fraudulent. Furthermore, I'm ordering that all legal fees incurred by the defendant be paid by the plaintiff." Michael's lawyers looked like they'd been slapped. "Additionally," the judge went on, "I'm referring this matter to the Cook County State's Attorney for potential criminal prosecution for fraud and embezzlement. And I'm issuing a restraining order preventing Mr. Michael Anderson from accessing any company accounts or making any business decisions without Mr. David Anderson's written consent pending further investigation." The gavel came down hard. "This case is dismissed." The courtroom erupted in whispers and murmurs. Michael just sat there, frozen, his face the color of paste. His fancy lawyers were packing up their briefcases, probably already calculating how to distance themselves from him. My crew guys in the back were grinning ear to ear. Sarah was crying happy tears. Jennifer shook my hand firmly and said, "Justice served, David. Justice served." I looked over at Michael one time. He finally met my eyes. For a split second, I thought I saw regret there. Or maybe fear. But I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. I just felt sad. Sad that greed had turned my brother into this. Sad that our father's legacy had been tainted. Sad that family meant so little to him. Over the next few weeks, everything unraveled for Michael. The state's attorney did investigate, and they found even more evidence of fraud. He ended up taking a plea deal to avoid prison time, but he had to pay back every penny he stole plus penalties. His reputation in the business community was destroyed. He had to sell his house to pay his legal fees and the restitution. His wife left him. The company employees who'd sided with him were suddenly very apologetic to me. Some of them I forgave. Others I let go. I had to rebuild trust and rebuild the business. But I did it. With the help of my loyal crew and a good accountant, I restructured everything. I bought out Michael's share for fair market value, which the court ordered, and I renamed it. No longer Anderson and Sons, just Anderson Construction. New chapter. I took the company in a direction Michael never would have. I focused on sustainable building, green construction, treating workers fairly. We're not the biggest company in Chicago, but we're known for quality and integrity. Revenue actually went up 30% in the first year after I took full control. Turns out that nothing construction worker actually knew what he was doing. I framed the court transcript from that day, specifically the part where the judge said I had integrity. It hangs in my office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that truth matters, that doing the right thing matters, that you can't fake character. I haven't spoken to Michael since that day in court. He tried to call me once about a year later. I didn't answer. Maybe one day I'll be ready to hear what he has to say. But not yet. The wound is still too fresh. What I learned from that whole nightmare is this. People will try to define you, especially when it serves their purposes. They'll try to make you small so they can feel big. But you know your own worth. You know your own truth. And if you stand firm in that, eventually the truth comes out. I didn't say anything when I walked out of that courtroom. I didn't need to. The court had already understood. Justice had been served. And I learned that being nothing in the eyes of someone who's lost their integrity is actually a compliment. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories of justice and redemption. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated by someone close to you? How did you prove them wrong? I read every single comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.